What is going on in the world? Well, apparently there are people being choked to death on trains in America. Yes, you heard me right. Jordan Neely, a man who was on a train in America and said some threatening things, and he was essentially choked to death by some bystanders who saved the rest of the people on the train. Now, let me just say this. I'm going to preface this, okay? And I want people to understand. I am not a Democrat. I am not a Republican. I don't see myself as left. I don't see myself as right. What I do see myself as is a human being. Okay, and what it is that when I look at this from a human perspective, there are some good things and there are some bad things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play what Candace Owens actually said about this incident, and then kind of see whether or not she's right or wrong. She is definitely right, I guess, sitting more so on the right, and she had an audience and has an audience that actually leans more towards the right. However, what I've come to see in America is that people have become so polarized, okay? And once you're on the right or once you're on the left, people are creating narratives towards one another on the left and the right, which bring people even further and further apart. Now, like I said, I'm going to look at this from a human perspective, not from somebody who has a political affiliation with anybody. So let's see what she says.
So he said, quote, "I'll hurt anyone on this train," according to Juan Vasquez, who was there. "I will hurt anyone on this train." And Juan Vasquez says that he, a grown adult man, felt fear because a rational mind would feel fear if a person who looked like a vagrant jumped on the plane and jumped onto a train and said that they were willing to go to prison, that they did not care, that they were willing to die, and that they would, quote, "hurt anyone on this train." But pardon you if you think that that's rational thinking, because obviously we have politicians that are sweeping in to tell you otherwise, despite the fact that Jordan Neely, as I mentioned, I think I said 42 arrests. No, he had 44 prior arrests, many of them subway related, including for disorderly conduct, assault, and fare evasion. But despite that,
Look, I'm going to say this. Many people have been in trouble with the law, okay? 44, 42 arrests, however many it is a lot of arrests. However, you live in a country that has a court of law and a law system, okay? And the judge of that law system actually decides whether or not the punishment fits the crime. What I'm asking myself within this case is, did Jordan Neely's punishment actually fit the crime that was dished out to him? What we have to understand is that this is a tactic to actually talk about somebody's previous runnings with the law. Now, for me, what I've come to realize is that this is a tactic used to dehumanize an individual. It is used to dehumanize somebody. So in the eyes of the public or the people that they're actually trying to get on their side, this person looks like less of a human, and the punishment that was dished out to them seems more plausible. So for me, I don't necessarily care what your runnings were prior. I'm always asking myself, is the punishment fitting of the crime? That's what I'm always asking myself.
despite all that, despite the fact that he had a history of threatening death, he had a history of harassing women, he had a history of screaming obscenities, despite the fact that his father says that he was a high school dropout who rarely took his medicine. Medicine for what? I don't know. Despite the fact that people online are saying that he's the same man that, according to this guy, jumped on me, grabbed my shoulders, and pushed me toward the tracks Sunday night at this very station. I was able to run away, but he, Jordan Neely, got physical and chased other people standing on the platform before getting on an uptown train. Despite all of that, all of the evidence that clearly this man was becoming more and more enraged, more and more emboldened in his crimes, don't worry, guys, despite all of that, the left is here to tell you why you should feel bad for him.
And this is my problem. people skew this towards a political narrative. They say this is the left. They say this is the right, because they understand that their audience essentially is so heavily engaged within being part of the left or being part of the right, okay, that this is going to cause more and more controversy. Like she said, this man was apprehended and he was brought down by what she calls, or who she calls, a hero. Now, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to try and give myself some balance and give you some balance out there. Did what Jordan Neely do, okay, deserve him being reprimanded? 100%. He should have been reprimanded. He should have been, like he said, he should have been taken down. And exactly what the public done. Should he have been choked for 15 minutes straight until he died? Now, this person that she calls a hero is a military trained individual. As a military trained individual, you understand what you're doing. Now, Jordan Neely is not military trained. You are military trained. Now, people can say, oh, he may have had a weapon. You had him on the ground for 15 minutes, and from what I saw from the footage, there were 2 other men helping this individual. So for 15 minutes, you knew that he never had a weapon. You knew that while you may restrain him, he didn't have a weapon. Fine. He should be restrained. I'm telling people he should have been restrained. What shouldn't have happened, his punishment that was dished out to him versus the crime that he done, going crazy at people, threatening people. He didn't have a weapon. Does murder, does death befit what he done? And one of the things that I found with Americans specifically, and I'm not trying to disrespect you guys, but you guys outside, when you look to people outside of America, we look into America and we understand that that place is so extreme. And so people will come up with reasons and reasoning to kill somebody who didn't deserve to be killed. Did they deserve to be apprehended? Yes. Did they deserve to die? No. That's not what his crime befitted. His crime didn't befit death. So anybody that thinks that the crimes that he committed on that day with those people around equals death, I'd ask myself, why do you think that he deserves to die? Did he deserve to die? Not in my opinion. However, the extremes that goes on in America, where you can whip people up to a point where you actually believe that somebody should die. What this shows to me is that there's such a lack of care for the human life. On one instance, Jordan Neely didn't care about his life. He said himself, I'm willing to die today. Apparently, eyewitnesses say, I'm willing to die, I'm willing to take people with me, etc., etc. So what that shows is that he didn't value his own life. Now, for a human being not to value their own life, doesn't that say to you that they're not all the way correct? That there's something going on with them mentally if they don't value their own life? Secondly, it shows that a lack of care for human life via the person who actually apprehended him. The man who knew this chokehold would cut off oxygen to his brain and essentially kill him for that long period of time. He didn't have any compassion within him that said, okay, cool, maybe it's a bit excessive now, loosen the grip for a while, I don't know, try something else if you are a trained individual. But because life is so frivolous to so many people nowadays, both individually and externally, these types of things happen.
Feel bad for him, definitely, because he lost his life because a hero stood up and tried to save everybody that was on the subway. Let's cut to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Here's what she said on Twitter. She says, Jordan Neely was murdered, but because Jordan was houseless and crying for food in a time when the city is raising rents and stripping services to militarize itself, while many in power demonize the poor, the murderer gets protected with passive headlines and no charges. It's disgusting. I am convinced that AOC is the kind of individual who roots for Joker when she's watching Batman.
The thing for me with Candace Owens as an individual is that I think Candace Owens is a brilliant individual. Okay, I think she has a great mind, and I think she says a lot of good things. However, what I've noticed with Candace Owens, from my own self, is that when it comes to men, black men specifically, she seems to have no empathy. She says in this video, it's actually called "I've Got No Sympathy." But she seems to have no empathy and no sympathy when black men specifically go through something. Now, I'm not saying all black men, as a black man myself, I'm not saying all black men are always innocent. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when something to do with race actually comes up and she's black herself, she seems to not take the side, or forget taking sides. Let me rephrase that. She seems to not have sympathy or empathy for any black men that have gone through something. So it doesn't matter whether it's George Floyd. You can have your disagreements and agreements on George Floyd. Doesn't out on Sterling. There was a guy who was jogging and was shot down jogging, another black guy. And it's just one of those things where it's just one of the things that I've noticed. Now, I don't like to always bring race into the equation, okay? However, it was brought into the equation within this context. And so Candace Owens is the type of woman who has to answer to her husband, okay? And as black people, we realize that if we have a black partner, there are certain conversations that we have about things that we experience as black people, and then there are certain conversations that we don't have. Now, Candace Owens has to go back to, now, bearing in mind, you can love who you want to love. This is not about, oh, you shouldn't interracially date and all this kind of stuff. You can date who you like. However, what I do know is that as a black person herself, she has to go back to somebody non-black and have a conversation about racism and about race and how it affects black people or doesn't affect black people. And I don't know if you're going to get an honest or she's going to get an honest observation of race from somebody who doesn't experience or hasn't experienced the quote unquote black experience and what it is to be black. So I don't necessarily believe that when she has to go home to her partner. So all these conversations about race, I'm sure she's having them with her partner. And my question is, what are you guys talking about when it comes to race? Because, you know, race matters in certain instances. It doesn't always matter, but when it does, what kind of conversations are you guys having?
I am convinced. She watches it and she says, he's a mentally ill man and we should feel bad for Joker. I really do believe this is how she thinks. This is how they are trying to condition everybody to think, right? That you need to be angry at people who think rationally and to tell people that they are wrong to feel fear when everything around them is telling them that this situation could end in death because it could. When Juan Vasquez says, we didn't know if he had a weapon, he is correct. For all they know, he could have had a pocket knife.
This is my problem. Fear. Okay? All of a sudden, everyone's so fearful. What if they've got a weapon? What if this? What if that? What if? We already saw that he never had a weapon. He was on the floor for 15 minutes. And the other three men reprimanding him and restraining him. He didn't have a weapon. They touched his waistband. I'm sure they touched his hands. They touched his pockets. He didn't have a weapon. So once you realize he doesn't have a weapon, that's something that you can actually put out of your mind. To actually continuously keep bringing that up, oh, what if he had a weapon? Is, like I said, it's part of the dehumanization process. And like I said, this guy should have been reprimanded, okay, and he should have been stopped. But in my personal point of view, he did not deserve to die because his crimes did not befit the punishment that was dished out to him. But that's what I think. You guys tell me what you think. Let me know your thoughts, comments in the comment section. Listen, remember, like, share and subscribe. We're going to be talking about what is going on in the world for a long time, it seems, because there's a lot of stuff going on, right? And so, yeah, I will keep covering it. You know, I will keep talking about it. Listen, I will catch you guys on the flip side.